بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم انصر أولياء اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي. ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أولياءك في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عنا وعن إخواننا في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربهم وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والطفنا وبهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. وصل وسلم على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل عليه برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين. Principle of sufficient reason. Leibniz is more it's associated with the name of Leibniz, but principle of sufficient reason is a principle which comes up whenever you try to think about the nature of reason and related concepts, I guess. Leibniz held that the principle of sufficient reason is fundamental to all types of reasoning. States in his own word that so this is his principle of sufficient reason. I don't think this is the definition of what sufficient reason is. I'm more interested in that at this point. So in a sense, this is not a good entry for that, but I just picked up because it came up, and I'm not bothered because it's just to help us to think through. You're not focus on a particular reading or particular entry as such. So Leibniz held that the principle of sufficient reason. So this is principle of sufficient reason. So held that there can be found no fact that is true or existent. I mean, generally we don't call the facts true or false because propositions are true or false, or statements or claims. Things are as they are. But anyhow, there can be found no fact that is true or existent, or any true proposition without there being a sufficient reason for its being so. So yeah, in that sense, it's his principle of sufficient reason. So he's not actually defining what sufficient reason is, and not otherwise. Although we cannot know these reason in most cases. So everything has, what he's saying is, everything has, there can be no reason. His principle of sufficient reason is that every fact, or even every being and proposition so for facts, their existence, true or false, there must be a reason. You must be able to provide reason, must be a reason for something exists. Something is rather than not. There must be a reason for that. And similarly, if a proposition is true or false, I guess, there must be a reason why they are true rather than false. But he's not saying that we can, sufficient reason, but he's not saying that we can know all those reasons. There is a reason for existence as well as reasons for why things are true rather than false. But we don't necessarily know them in all cases, or can know them in all cases. In short, the principle is that nothing is without reason for its being, and for being it is. So there are two things here. So anything which exists, for example, tree. A tree exists, tree which is just in front. So there must be a reason for its existence. I mean, in this case, reason would be generally a cause. But not necessarily reduced to a cause. A reason can be a cause plus something else. So there must be what he's saying, there must be a reason for that this tree exists rather than it doesn't exist. Okay. I guess you can say there must be a reason for something not existing. For example, there are many possible things. So there must be a reason that they don't exist. So I'm not sure whether Leibniz would say that as well. I don't remember. Been a while. And the second thing is there must also be a reason for the way it exists. So, for example, tree is green rather than red, for example. It's tall rather than short. It's a particular type rather than some other type. So there must be a reason for that. So far, that's his principle of sufficient reason, but it doesn't say actually what would be the nature of that reason, at least not from this entry. I don't get the idea that it actually defines what type of reason what is sufficient reason actually. It doesn't. If so, for example, how is it different from necessary reason? Now, Schopenhauer devoted he's one of German philosophers who is a strange type of Kantian. He's Kantian plus. But on the basis, he develops Kant's philosophy, so he's a Kantian as well as a post-Kantian. So Schopenhauer devoted his earliest philosophical work to the discussion of the principle. I think probably that was his doctoral thesis, which he characterized as what authorizes us everywhere to search for why. That principle authorizes us everywhere to search for the why. He rightly criticizes predecessors, which is not surprising because if he is a Kantian, then Kant obviously criticizes the principle of sufficient reason in his critique. Leibniz included for misunderstanding it. And probably I sort of implicitly alluded to the objection here because he criticized Leibniz and others for misunderstanding the principle of sufficient reason, chiefly by confusing the notion of reason and cause. So it seems that for Um, for for Leibniz, cause and reason. Cause is a form of reason. So when you say something is being rather than nothing, what you are asking for is its cause of its existence, and you are treating it as a reason. So he makes a distinction between reason and cause, and the basic distinction, to use the modern terminology, between cause and reason is the basic distinction between cause and reason in modern philosophical terminology is that reason is a normative concept. So you are not just saying that. On the other hand, cause is not necessarily a normative concept. So reasoning not just involve how things are, but how they should be, or what is the fact, but what is, how should it be, or what is right. Uh, and normativity in this sense is related to freedom. On the other hand, cause is related to determinism. But although the distinction, so for example, when I say that what is the cause of this tree being green rather than yellow, so you provide, for example, biological explanation through the concept of photosynthesis or whatever. So what you are actually providing is a causal explanation. But that's how the processes within nature work. On the other hand, if somebody steals, for example, and you say someone to steal, and somebody asks me why, and the answer I'm giving is more normative question. Normative answer, in the sense that what I'm saying is I will give them a reason, not just a cause. There might be some cause, that they did steal because of this and this, but causes are related to deterministic laws. On the other hand, reason is related to freedom, and only with freedom the question arises of what should be the case. But even if we accept this distinction, causes can be reason. For example, I can actually use causes as I, as an agent, can use cause or causal explanation as a reason. So cause itself wasn't a reason, but when I use it as an agent to explain or to rebut some claim or to support some claim, then I'm giving it as a reason. So if somebody says, the tree shouldn't be green because it is autumn, for example, it should have been yellow. So I will give them explanation, but my explanation can be a reason as well. Even though explanation is causal, but when I'm using that explanation to provide support for my argument, then this explanation is actually being used or as reason. I'm not sure how clear this is, but that's something we need to develop. So he criticized people for confusing the notion of causes and reason. Schopenhauer himself distinguished four distinct explanatory application of the principle: the physical, That's why his book is called, I think, Fourfold Something of Reason. Schopenhauer himself distinguished four distinct explanatory applications of the principle of sufficient reason: the physical, in explaining the change in the world; the logical, in driving truth a priori; the mathematical, in giving geometrical demonstration. So that means that geometry is not reducible to logic for him, as against many mathematicians, not all; and the moral, in explaining the action in terms of motives. That can all, yeah. This classification might be unsatisfactory, but the principle itself captures something intuitively compelling in having it, that whatever is or happen must, from some point of view, be finally explicable. Yeah, that's the basis for the principle of sufficient reason. But that explanation can be, necessary explanation can be sufficient. So it doesn't really. So we have this desire to know everything, explanation of everything. So that's the motive behind sufficient reason. But that explanation, what is its nature, is not yet clear, because when I talk about, when in my mind, apart from this principle of sufficient reason, but sufficient reason itself is different from other types of reason, in that after sufficient reason, if there is a sufficient reason, the question, you don't need to raise, or the questioning stops. You can't raise any further question. So in that sense, sufficient reason is the final explanation, after which you then don't need any explanation. So that's what sufficient reason is in my mind. So that's different from reason as such, because we give a lot of reason, but doesn't mean that those reasons are, they might be sufficient for us, but might not be sufficient for someone else, for example. But the actual sufficient reason would be the sufficient reason or set of reason, after which, for a particular thing, you don't need any further explanation. Okay, I think that was a good review, good refreshing. But we need to think about this again, the principle of sufficient reason. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. صلى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين يا رب.